Almost everyone is going to be introduced to Dark Souls as a dark, intimidating, macabre game. You die all the time, there's big, scary monsters, all the NPCs are weird and off-putting. You have to kill a dog, sad piano plays over the final boss, and then it all ends with your character either burning alive or marching into uncertainty. Many, or even most of the people who sing the praises of this game frame it as this miserable experience where the mechanics punish you and the emotions are bleak. This really bugs me. It might seem counterintuitive, but I swear I didn't clickbait you with that title. Dark Souls is already one of my very favorite games ever. It's probably third or fourth place depending on my mood, and probably my choice if I had to pick only one game to be able to play for the rest of my life. And that decision isn't just motivated by the fact that I enjoy playing it, but because it empowers me, it motivates me, it lets me escape for a bit and come out the other end with something tangible, something I can use. It's been a guiding light for me as much as any piece of art can. For the sake of simplicity, I don't intend to justify this in mechanical terms. There are a few things I could say, but Dark Souls is already one of the most mechanically overanalyzed games ever made, and I'm not keen on adding to that messy pile. What does interest me is the game's themes, which are simple, but communicated in a complex way. Dark Souls explores ideas with pure verisimilitude. It lets you understand the forces that drive the world in the same way you would as if it was a real place, and it honestly makes all the traditional ways of exploring a story and theme feel suffocatingly didactic by comparison. The perception of Dark Souls as a macabre game, even putting aside its difficulty, is owed a lot to the fact that the game leans extremely hard into imagery and stories of entropy. Lordran has been characterized by many people as a post-apocalyptic setting. Everything and everyone you see is well past their prime, wasting away, often having their drawn-out lives cut anticlimactically short by the chosen undead. The visual metaphor at the heart of Dark Souls is fire. The Age of Fire is the Age of the Gods, and as it runs out of fuel and fades, as all fire does, the Age of Dark encroaches, and this is the loaded language that Dark Souls uses to funnel you through the accepted dominant narrative of the world. Light is good, dark is bad. This is easy to latch onto, and it's one of my favorite things about Dark Souls because of how quickly it replicates the unquestioning acceptance of the dominant narrative. You can't recreate an entire life lived inside this world, but you can tap into instantly recognizable shorthand that transcends even the vast majority of cultural boundaries. Light is good, dark is bad. Dark Souls is often called a game of moral ambiguity, but plenty about it is extremely clear. Gwyn is an oppressive ruler. Everything we hear about him doing revolves around him securing his own power. His most perilous fear is losing that power. The ramifications of Gwyn's desperation are seen everywhere, from the piles of innocent bodies in New Londo, to the violent subjugation of Isolith's clearly once vibrant capital, to the barren silence of Anor Londo, and the lie still being propped up to no one in particular, to the undead curse itself, an attempt to wrangle the darkness of humanity under control. Gwyn's most loyal knights are corrupted, forced to waste away in a dead city, or are burned alive to provide just a little bit more fuel for the first flame. And, of course, in the case of the chosen undead, the fate of the undead prophecy upon inspection proves to be little more than a factory line pumping out attempted hero after attempted hero, all enticed by a quest that they're so deep into by the time they realize that the initial promise was a sham that they have little choice to press forward, or else hollow. And, of course, finally reaching the kiln, they'll provide one bit of extra kindling, so Gwyn can hold on to the power he can barely use anymore. But, of course, he would rather burn himself than give it up to humanity. Gwyn's beliefs that humanity should be beneath him, that he has a divine right to rule as a god, and the fact that he'd rather drive the entire world to ruin and decay rather than have the status quo be upended, are far from unrealistic fantasy tropes. Within Gwyn's actions and motivations lies an entire history of power and abuse, From centuries of divinely justified autocracy through countless civilizations, to the endless hunger of colonialism, to the recklessly destructive profit-chasing of powerful capitalists. There are at least two things that all these structures have in common that are important to Dark Souls. The first is that they make an extremely high priority of propaganda, but being too transparent about the structure is ill-advised. No matter how hard you work to deny the masses a proper education, nobody would be much convinced if you were honest about the greed necessary to be a mass subjugator. Thus, the route that all of them have taken has been to naturalize themselves. Their power over others and their need to maintain and expand that power destructively, those aren't personal choices, but rather an inevitable result of fixed forces that would be absurd to question. I am descended from the gods. Our skull structure has given us a superior culture that everyone would be better off with. We have worked the hardest. Light is good. Dark is bad. Everyone in Lordran takes the foundational myths that drive the world for granted, despite the fact that a change in perspective is all that's really needed to understand that every single part of the world is dying because of Gwyn, and his attempts to cling to the Age of Fire. The one character in the entire game who contradicts this narrative, Calf, not only tells you essentially nothing that you couldn't figure out on your own, but also requires you to go down a difficult path incredibly early on that the game never directs you towards, and is in fact the literal opposite direction of where you're intended to go at the start. Gwyn and the gods operate covertly, and even the things that they haven't buried, they've conditioned you not to notice. The second thing they all have in common, and the root of everything, is exploitation. Despite the naturalist narrative they create, their power is not inevitable or self-sustaining. It's only propped up by what's below them. This is where the central imagery of fire in Dark Souls comes back around. The Age of Fire, the status quo, is maintained via a literal flame, the first flame. And flames require fuel, whether it be knights, or gods, or gullible undead. The kiln is situated in a valley of literal ash, showing the unfathomable amount of souls that have been sacrificed so that humanity never claims the power previously held by the gods. The imagery is so striking, and perfectly sums up the ugly engine that keeps all exploitative regimes, including Gwyn's, up and running. At this point, you may feel entirely misled by all the stuff I yacked about Dark Souls being uplifting, because this is all pretty dire, but fortunately for us, and sadly for Gwyn, and every other exploitative ruler in history, there's one thing that none of us can change. Fires always go out. Kindling is not unlimited. Once it's burned, it can never be again. Once you've run so low on immediate surroundings that you yourself have been used as kindling, you're forced to reach outside for fuel, and your grasp becomes less and less powerful. Furthermore, once the world is in a state like that of Lordran, it becomes more and more obvious that the structures that prop up your tyranny are not just dangerous, but entirely unnecessary. The fuel line cannot and will not last forever, and all that's required for it to stop is that heroes stop believing the lie. Once people are no longer fooled, the subjugators can no longer subjugate. And furthermore, systems and structures that aren't exploitative, that don't require lies and fuel, share none of these problems. Fires always go out. Darkness is forever. When I first played Dark Souls, the good feelings it gave me felt immediate and confined to the satisfaction of accomplishing difficult things in a digital space. And obviously, that's still a factor in the motivation and positivity I get from this game. How much it rewards determination and knowledge acquisition, and how it trivializes failure in a way that encourages me to push through and also adds so much more to the ultimate satisfaction of overcoming. But that specific texture is a little more muted now that I can plow through on New Game for my 20th playthrough with practically zero roadblocks. What is enduringly reassuring about Dark Souls, to me, is the way that it frames progress, specifically progress from horrible power structures, as inevitable. The flames will fade eventually, no matter what you choose, but you're not without autonomy, as you can choose to prevent the prolonging of inevitable change. No world, real or digital, belongs in a state of exploitation, and there are forces that ensure that it won't. Gwyn's rule, despite the lies, is not natural, and it can be stopped. Fires always go out. That is natural. There's nothing Gwyn can do about that.
Thank you for your patience, everyone. I kind of fell off the video train again. I'm sorry, but I have a couple, shorter ideas that I could flesh out and turn into something maybe. You can kind of get the ball rolling again. So thank you, everyone who's subscribed or just kind of stuck around. It's really nice of you. I appreciate it. I don't really have a joke that I like that I usually do for these parts. I mean, I guess I said, like, get the ball rolling or something. Maybe I could just be lazy and cut to that part in Sense Fortress where